Good evening. I'm Leland Vittert. Few words invoke fear in teenagers like the SAT. As the test goes all digital, many of America's top universities say they won't require scores in the name of equity. Why that move could hurt thousands of America's poorest kids. Plus, Washington's most powerful man is also the most mysterious. How much longer White House Chief of Staff Klain can stay in the shadows? But first, The Roar of the Tiger Mom. Once a popular book about how to drive your children's success, the term now has new meaning. Tiger moms and dads are turning on schools and school boards and principals across America over mask mandates, CRT, and remote learning. They, the parents, the Tiger moms and dads, have a radical idea that parents, not administrators, not governors, know what's best for their kids. The Virginia Republican governor won his election largely on that platform. 7 school boards are suing the governor so they can keep their mask mandates in place, regardless of how parents feel. We're going to get more on Virginia in a minute, but first to New York, where students walked out of class in a mask protest.
I told her that, with all due respect, I have to go fight for something I believe in, and that was not wearing masks. So I walked out of class and I decided to join the protest.
My daughter has sensory issues. My son himself experienced high anxiety and tics that we were speaking to our doctors about. Government shall not ever parent our kids. We will be parenting our kids.
The parents of Nassau County on New York's Long Island got a brief victory last night when a judge sided with them and overturned the mask mandate. Writing, while the intentions of Commissioner Bassett and the governor appear to be, well, aimed squarely at what they are doing and what they believe is right to protect the citizens of New York State, they must take their case to the state legislature, essentially saying the governor is not an empress, and a mask mandate must come from the people's representatives, their elected representatives. But today, the governor got to declare victory when an appeals judge said kids must keep the masks on.
I'm encouraging parents and students to continue doing what they're doing, because the last thing I want to see is a different trend because people gave up on the mask.
The governor's credibility on the sincerity of her beliefs on masks is open to question, especially with pictures like this showing her maskless and smiling. You can see her there in the red in the center, while all the kids are forced to wear masks. One might think who is a greater threat to who in that picture, but we'll leave it there. The science about masks is mixed. The cloth ones are about 37% effective when worn perfectly. Surgical and N95s, of course, are much better. Good luck getting a kid to wear a mask perfectly. But that didn't stop one teacher accused of duct taping a kid's mask to their face. Just look at the image for a second. Little boy sitting there, and the teacher is taping the mask to his face. Just imagine if that was your child. Imagine, as a parent, what you would think if that was your child who was the teacher. How could you have gone so wrong? We're going to try to follow up on what will happen to that teacher. Pictures like that are fueling this movement. They fueled the election in Virginia that brought Glenn Youngkin to power. In Virginia, it's the opposite of New York. School boards in more liberal parts of the state want to keep the mask mandates, but the new governor tried to ban them. Here is the Attorney General of Virginia explaining their lawsuit right now.
This is really about saying, listen, parents matter. Parents can make these individual decisions. That's actually in the Code of Virginia, that parents have a fundamental right to the education upbringing of their children.
So the lawsuits are coming, but the schools are fighting back. Just got a heads up that Loudoun County schools, this is a tweet from Virginia, are punishing kids who don't wear masks by putting them in the equivalent of rubber rooms without access to instruction. Teachers are insisting kids wear masks regardless of the governor's order and saying wait until a Supreme Court decision. There are similar lawsuits in Missouri and Florida, but it is impossible to try and book a mask enthusiast. We have tried, trust us. Our bookers have called dozens of people. For some reason, they, along with the superintendents and the principals and the school administrators and the school board members promoting mandatory masks and the governors, are reluctant to come on and try and defend why 5-year-olds should be forced to wear masks. The invitation, of course, remains open. In the meantime, we look to the next battleground, Ohio, where Heather Mullins plans a suit. She's joined by her attorney, Warner Mendenhall. Nice to see you both. Heather, start with you. You just founded a group called My Child, My Choice. You don't want kids to be forced to wear masks. The school says they're willing to go to court. How far are you willing to go?
Well, just to bring you up to speed, this started about 4 months ago, and this was very personal, considering that my twin daughters have had historical issues of asthma and allergies, and seeing what was happening to them by not having a logical option to have the option, our group started to grow, and we are willing to encompass not only the mask mandate with this lawsuit if they don't respond accordingly, that will also encompass the insane quarantining guidelines that are happening along with the forced testing. The inconsistencies have to stop. We're not going to get through this anytime soon other than natural immunity.
So,
and all three of those components.
I'm going to stop you there because a lot of people hear people who are against masks for kids and they say, oh, you're just another anti-vax kook. Is that a fair characterization?
That is not. My daughters have taken all of the historical vaccinations aside from the flu vaccine or the flu shot. And after a lot of research, knowing I needed to have a temperature of what this was going to do in regards to how it would impact them, it came out so quickly. And now information is coming out right and left that this is doing more harm than good.
The issue about the mask is interesting. I'm going to put the vaccine debate to the side for a second because there's a number of doctors who are cited by the mask enthusiasts, if you will, saying that they're just fine for children. Take a listen.
Saying to the governor, stand down. It's about the kids, Governor. We are tired of sending our kids to school with masks. And by the way, this is about choice.
That was the Nassau County executive talking to the governor in New York. That wasn't the soundbite we were talking about. This is from a Mayo Clinic doctor saying that masks on kids do a lot of good with no real cost. Take a listen.
There have been now numerous studies done, and these studies have unequivocally shown that there's no negative health effects on children from wearing a mask. We know that masks significantly protect both the person who's wearing them and the people around them.
Warner, how are you going to fight against that in court?
Well, I mean, first of all, we have a lot of studies that show that masks are really very ineffective, especially with kids. And then if you look at the emotional damage that it does for kids, just simply not to see the expressions on people's face, it really damages their learning. It damages their socialization. I mean, there's all kinds of problems with these masks.
Is that when have we ever been in a nation where there is a one size fits all for anything? And so when I have to move my daughters to a private school that gives them the option, and in 3 weeks time, so mind you, my twin daughters are 16 years old. We were at Springfield local schools in Holland, Ohio. I have no problem saying that out loud with pride. And we went to every extent to just give them an option. My one daughter was on an antibiotic for her dermatologist because she was breaking out so badly. I was getting text messages every day that they couldn't take it. They were peaked when they came home. Life would come back to them in the weekend. In 3 weeks' time, not only have I been communicated with the counselor that they want to bump them up in their honors classes, they come home happier, they are out of their room more, and I have my children back. So the mental anguish that is going on with that, it's not a one size fits all. We're just asking for the option.
And we've done a lot of stories that the lockdowns of schools and the remote learnings, especially in teen girls, is causing a huge increase in suicides and a lot of other problems. Warner, give us the path for the lawsuit going forward here, because Ohio I know is different than New York and Virginia.
You know, Ohio is very different. You know, we have medical freedom in Ohio under our Ohio Constitution, which we are trying to enforce. The other thing that I think everyone needs to remember around the country is that this is an EUA device. It's not an approved medical device. And when you have an emergency use authorization, you have a right to consent or refuse to consent to it. So they are really violating basic human rights principles.
Real quick, Warren, I only have 20 seconds. What is their best argument on the other side you're most worried about, and how are you going to refute it?
Well, honestly,
Okay, you got to be worried about one of their arguments. What would it be?
I am actually not worried about their arguments at all. I think they are utterly ridiculous. I think it is driven by the money. I think they were just trying to justify taking all the money that they took. That's all it's about. It's the money. That's why school board members stare at these parents with blank stares. They will
we've
not.
done a lot of stories of the school boards that don't even want to have to respond to the parents. We haven't had any luck booking any of the mask enthusiasts. So, Warner, if anybody from the lawsuit on the other side wants to come on, feel free to give them our number. All right?
I'm available anytime. I mean, I can. Let me give you a little bit of insight.
Warner, I apologize. I've got to get to Ukraine, where we might have a war coming. But we'll talk to you soon. Thank you, Heather. Thank you as well. The drumbeats of war that we were just talking about should bring important and pointed questions, just like about the mask debate. And no matter what you think about Ukraine or Russia or China, when the president of the United States says the following, whatever you think of President Biden, when the president says this, pay attention.
If he were to move in with all those forces, it would be the largest invasion since World War II. It would change the world.
President Biden reaffirmed that American troops would not go to help Ukraine. The fragile former Soviet satellite is on its own to fight 100,000 Russian troops ready to roll into the eastern part of that country. There are some American weapons that have been delivered, but that's about it. Mr. Biden promised massive economic sanctions against Vladimir Putin, and 8,500 American troops are now on alert as a show of strength to reinforce NATO. Ukraine is not part of NATO. Now is where things get a little complicated. Over on Fox, Tucker Carlson can't seem to understand why Russia invading Ukraine is problematic for the United States.
Ukraine is strategically irrelevant to the United States. No rational person could defend a war with Russia over Ukraine. Nobody thinks a war like that would make America safer or stronger or more prosperous. The Chinese must be watching this happen with their jaws open, completely delighted.
He might be right, but for the wrong reason. The Chinese are completely delighted because of how little the Biden administration is actually doing. But leave that to the side for just a second, because Bruen Keeler at CNN couldn't help herself. Tucker is Putin's puppet, she says.
The real question here may be, why is Rupert Murdoch allowing this anti-democratic BS on the air there? Here we are talking about him, which I think is exactly what he wants, and maybe that's why he says some of this craziness.
And Brianna, you certainly oblige him. As we said, these are serious times. They require serious questions, legitimate questions from Tucker, and more importantly, serious answers. Why to go to war over Ukraine? Because if you show Putin you are willing to go to war, you don't have to. He's a bully. When you stand up to him, he backs down. President Trump actually did that. If you show the world America stands up for our allies, the world is a better place. Just look at the peace and prosperity from the early 1980s all the way through the mid-2000s, Republicans and Democrats. Tucker's right. Xi of China is grinning ear to ear. Probably even a bigger grin than in those pictures. Mr. Biden is giving him the Olympics. NBC will cover it wall to wall with glowing coverage, and his buddy Putin will embarrass the United States by taking over Ukraine despite President Biden's strong words. Joining us now, Brett Bruen, former director of global engagement in the Obama White House. Brett, we've known each other for a long time, so we could speak candidly. Did I get anything wrong?
You know, it's funny, Leland, I remember when I was still at the White House and we were out, I think, in Farragut Park chatting about Russia. So, yes, we've had this conversation going back for a while. And unfortunately, I'm seeing a lot of the same mistakes that we made back in 2014 replaying themselves again and again here. We talk about, strong economic sanctions, and yet there's no evidence that economic sanctions have changed the Kremlin's calculus. So we've got to start looking at other options. We also, quite frankly, have to be a lot more careful about the consequences for our allies, because there are a lot of European leaders right now that are very worried about whether or not Ukraine will be Putin's last stop.
All right. Give the White House its due. We're going to talk about Ron Klain and the rest of the administration in a minute. But President Biden's an old foreign policy hand. He's been at this 40 years. He saw how Putin embarrassed President Obama in Ukraine in 2014. Is it that they just can't learn? They don't want to learn? They're not willing to have the cost? Why repeat the same mistakes?
Well, look, I think part of the problem is that too many on Biden's team have not realized that the world has changed remarkably in the last several years. And so you don't have, unfortunately, some of our career diplomats who've been out there working on the front lines for the past few years. You don't have a diversity of experience in the situation room. And so we're getting into the same problems.
I hate to make this political because this is so serious, but the whole campaign, the whole premise of the Biden campaign was the adults will be back in the room, America will be back. I can just imagine that if President Trump was in office right now and this was happening, and his response, President Trump's response, was what Biden was doing right now, Democrats would be up in arms.
Well, you know, and it's interesting because we're seeing a lot of the same isolationist, disengaged strategies that President Trump had advanced, now coming out of the Biden White House. The fact of the matter is, and we've seen this going back to Biden's summit in Geneva with Putin over the summer, is essentially his message to Russia and to a whole lot of other countries is, keep it on the down low. I don't want to have to deal with major international crises. So, you know, they slap a few sanctions on and call it a day. And that's why we continue to find ourselves in the same situation, the same crises again and again.
The one thing that struck me that was slightly different about President Trump's policy towards Russia is they killed 300 of Putin's mercenaries in Syria. That was an order from President Trump. And after that, Putin didn't really make that much mischief around the world. Is there some lesson to be learned that he's got to get a bloody nose at some point?
Absolutely. And I think we have to realize that this notion of offering Putin an off-ramp is not going to work. We've been trying it since the days of his Crimean invasion. He's not going to take it. He's going to take the off-ramp, and then he's going to accelerate down the highway. So we've got to come up with some real punishments that are going to make a difference.
Hey, Brett, one of the reasons we're friends and we've been talking since 2014 is because you tell the truth, whether it's good for your team or not. And I know President Obama always appreciated that, and we appreciate it here. Good to see you.
Thanks, Leland.
Yeah, thank you. Coming up, President Biden's hot mic moment is pretty tame compared to some of his predecessors. Back in history, wait till you hear what LBJ did. Plus, he's one of the most powerful men in Washington, yet he often works in the shadows. Who's Ron Klain? Why is everyone mad at him? And how long is he going to have a job? His official title is White House Chief of Staff, or just Chief, around 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, typically Washington's second most powerful job. But Ron Klain has redefined the office that sits with its own impressive view of the White House South Lawn. Unlike former chiefs of both parties, Klain is rarely seen, but joking or not, Republicans and Democrats refer to him as Prime Minister Klain because of his unusual power. And amid inflation, the border, COVID, crime, Ukraine, a stalled legislative agenda, and sagging poll numbers, the log knives are out. From Politico, it's Ron Klain's turn in the barrel. Biden's chief of staff started strong and earned plaudits, but increasingly he's under scrutiny for the state of the presidency. It's not just Politico, but the Washington Post, among others. Ron Klain had the perfect resume. His first year showed the limits of that experience. Quote, Klain and his sterling credentials have repeatedly bumped up against the unusual challenges of governing in today's Washington. Having covered the White House during 2 administrations, let me tell you, those stories only come up when people are leaking and trying to get someone fired. Leaks about staff changes and fighting in the White House for reporters is like getting a toddler Rice Krispie treats, treats plural. So the story shouldn't come as a huge surprise, but it at least appears Klain still has the full-throated support of President Biden. We couldn't even find a picture of Biden and Klain together easily for this graphic. Having the support of President Biden is really the only thing that matters. Sarah Mucha covers the White House for Axios and joins us now. Good to see you. Welcome back to the program. I'm going to mix my metaphors, Sarah. About Ron Klain and his problems, is there smoke, a smoke machine, or is there a real fire?
Well, I think you're right that often these stories do come out when you're going to see some kind of shift in any kind of White House or public office, but you also see them when a president has low approval ratings. And what we're seeing right now is President Biden is at the lowest that he's been since his presidency in the 40s, not exactly right at 40. And the person that is likely going to get a lot of the brunt of that, besides the president, is going to be his chief of staff, who, as you mentioned, has had a pretty outsized role in this administration. You know, he comes to the job with a lot of deep White House experience. He was the chief of staff to then Vice President Biden. He was also chief of staff to Al Gore when he was vice president. And he has the president's ear. President Biden trusts him. So is there smoke? Is there fire? Unclear. What we do know for sure is that the president's not performing well. There's going to be a lot of stories coming out trying to pinpoint exactly why that is. And
also a lot of CYA among members of the staff also to point fingers at other people, and then reporters write that, and the other side does the same thing. Chiefs of staff stay in office. This is the first chief of any administration going back all the way to Mac McClarty and the Bill Clinton days. Ron Klain is outlasted Reince Priebus by a while. What do you make, McClarty a year and 178 days, Rahm Emanuel a year and 258 days, Ron Klain a year and 5 days. And then you've got Andy Card, the Bush White House. He was there for well over 5 years. Is there something about Democratic administrations where it's a little different than with Republicans?
That's a great question and a great observation. I think what we'll see with Klain specifically, like I mentioned, is that he truly has the trust of President Biden. That's something that we saw when he was an informal advisor on the campaign. He's someone who is constantly out on the, we may not physically see too much of him. He does do some media interviews, but we do always see him on Twitter. You know, I'm getting notifications on my phone that he's retweeting someone, tweeting someone, into midnight, 1 a.m. He's constantly awake, constantly working, and folks who work with him say that he's very hard-charging. He can be even aggressive.
His tweets have gotten him in trouble, right? The retweet of the vaccine mandate when he said OSHA's doing a emergency workplace rule is the ultimate workaround. He retweeted that. That became part of the Supreme Court case that ultimately was the failure of the vaccine mandate. Klain's tweet on inflation. Most of the economic problems we're facing, inflation, are high-class problems. These seem like really epically tone-deaf for a guy who has so much power and seems so much in control.
Yeah, the tweets are kind of an ever sort of mystery. I would also say that Twitter has never been, I think we've talked about this more than once regarding several different people in power, that Twitter's never a good place to go to take your message. Nope. It's not ever going to be or like a net positive. If anything, it'll be a net negative.
Yeah, and it is not real life, which we all have to remember. Right. Sarah, good to see you. And when somebody leaks about Ron Klain, no matter what it is, you don't have to tell us who said it, but come back and talk about it, all right?
Will do.
Thank you.
Will you take questions on inflation then?
Thank you. Thank you
all.
Do
you think inflation is a political liability?
That's a great asset. More inflation. What a stupid son of
Well, there's a lot of critics now clutching their pearls after President Biden was caught on a hot mic insulting Fox News White House correspondent, my former colleague and good friend Peter Doocy, over his question on inflation. On The View, the host accused Mr. Biden of crossing the line.
It's not like he just, dismissed it as a dumb question. Like, it was, he name called.
I completely agree with you. It's sort of beneath the dignity of the presidency.
To be clear, it's the ladies of The View who are now somehow passing this great moral judgment. And just a few minutes ago on Fox News, President Potty Mouth, the sophistication, the outrage. For what it's worth, Mr. Biden called Doocy last night, said it wasn't personal. And of course, Mr. Biden is among a long list of presidents who have, at times, lost their patience with the press. Take a listen.
It's not fair to judge my whole career by a rehash on Iran. How would you like it if I judged your career by those 7 minutes when you walked off the set in New York? Well, now, would you like that?
What do you say to Americans who are watching you right now who are scared?
I say that you're a terrible reporter. That's what I say.
We bring in Colby Hall, Mediaite founding editor and NewsNation producer. All right, all compliments to Peter Doocy, how he asked the question, how he's handled himself afterwards, an absolute class act. But the sort of aghast nature of the reaction from people who should understand cable news is a full contact sport. That's why Mediaite exists.
There is nothing that cable news pundits love more than controversy and conflict, and this was controversial conflict. This was a return to the pro wrestling era of politics that we got so inured with former President Trump. And yeah, I think what you just played there, perfectly exemplified by The View, this gave them the opportunity to signal their virtue. You know, they all were so critical of Trump for being so tough on tough questions, and so they need to be consistent. And the truth of the matter is, you know, A, it was a stupid question. B, this was good for Joe Biden. And the biggest winner of all of this is Mediaite's winner of the day, Peter Doocy, because not only did he get elevated to be the top trending story in the world that day, but he also, you know, had the opportunity to play it with grace and humility and humor, and he didn't take it personally. He didn't need an apology. So in a weird way, everyone kind of came out of this a winner, except for those who were clutching their pearls.
And all the producers had 6 minutes of their show to fill, ready-made television. And look, you know, when the president calls you out, I know President Trump did it to me on Twitter. It's a great day. It proves you're doing your job. It also gives you chops on the other side. All good things come from that. Here's the tweet that I was trained at CNN. But anyway, I guess the question is, though, at what level does the insincerity become apparent to the viewers of the outrage and the virtue signaling like what we saw on The View?
Well, you know, I think it's already there. I think what we see is that there's a sort of divided audience. I hate to say that there are those who watch this stuff critically and can see that it's entertainment packaged as news and political insight, but it's really no different than pro wrestling or, you know, trash talking that you see on the court in the NBA. I think some people can see right through that. Others watch it and, you know, don't think of it so critically, and it reinforces their opinion. And it's something that sort of President Biden said last week during his press conference, that not that many people watch a variety. Their media diet is very sort of insular, and that more people need to watch different outlets to get a fuller picture. So I think a lot of people see it as insincere already. More people should.
That's a great point. And you also think about how many more outlets there are these days than there were, say, back in the days of LBJ. You had NBC, ABC, CBS. That was it. He watched all three every night. Lyndon Johnson once invited reporters to an impromptu news conference on Air Force One and changed his clothes and went nude while taking questions. This was the headline from CNN. Nude presidential news conference. It happened here, that being on Air Force One. Thankfully, in the picture, he has his clothes on. But what's amazing is that back in the day, we didn't really ever know what the interactions were between the press and the president, because you'd never write that. The same way the press never wrote about JFK's philandering.
Well, I read about that today. News broke that Brian Williams apparently turned down a CBS anchor gig. And there was a time when I grew up that anchoring a network news show was the most influential place in the world. And that was at a time where you really had a half hour of national news, maybe 2 editions of your local paper. And right now, you know, network news, we're overwhelmed by information.
You really believe that he turned it down, or he just wanted it leaked that he turned it down?
Yeah, I don't think that CBS was an appealing spot for him, frankly. Yeah. And I also think that he realizes, I mean, I think he's a unique guy that wants to do comedy, oddly, but I think he honestly sees that there's way more influence in the cable ecosphere than there is on network, even though there's higher ratings there. So, but yeah, no, the information ecosystem has evolved, and we are overwhelmed, and we have a hard time figuring out what's up, what's down, and you know, it's confusing.
Which is why we turn to Mediaite, and the media winner and loser of the day, as selected by Colby Hall, founding editor. Good to see you, my friend. Thank you.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me, Leland.
Yeah, thank you. A hospital refuses to give a patient a heart transplant because of what he won't do. That debate next. And colleges are increasingly not using the SAT to measure applicants. They're trying to be more inclusive, but it's hurting a whole lot of students who they're supposed to be helping. We'll tell you who when we come back. All day, you've heard about how the SAT is going digital. It's a big announcement. Many scholars will tell you the change will help improve equity in the quest to go to college. But not everyone thinks that. An op-ed in the Wall Street Journal makes the case for keeping the standardized test. By ditching the SAT, Harvard hurts minority students. How do you help people move forward without honestly assessing where they stand? Jason Riley in the Wall Street Journal. It's not just Harvard that's getting rid of the requirement. 80% of schools offering a bachelor's degree don't make applicants take the test. Natalie Wexler, an author who's written extensively about the American education system, senior contributor at Forbes, with us now. Is this, I can't figure out what the value in eliminating the SAT is other than the fact that every kid hates taking it.
Yeah, well, the studies have actually shown that going test optional, maybe even eliminating the SAT, doesn't make much difference in the diversity of the student body, maybe just 1 percentage point in terms of underrepresented minorities and students from low-income families. So I think if we want to promote diversity at college campuses, we have to go beyond tinkering with the SAT or making it optional.
Window dressing, you might say. This was the quote from the Wall Street Journal. Eliminating the test, and you point this out, won't eliminate the racial achievement gap because the test is not causing the gap, merely exposing it. Academic standards are being diluted or eliminated out of an unspoken fear that blacks will never measure up. It's much harder for the school to justify rejecting somebody with an SAT at the 95th percentile in other measurable achievements. Would we be better off spending all this money from these universities trying to help underprivileged kids do better on the tests?
Well, I don't think test prep is going to help. It's just too little, too late. I think what we really need to do is start much earlier. We have a lot of problems with the way we do elementary school in this country that ends up advantaging kids who are already advantaged because we don't build the kind of academic knowledge and vocabulary that's really being tested on a test like the SAT. So that's the long-term solution, I would say. Shorter term, I think what would be much fairer is rather than giving these sort of, and the SAT is kind of like a reading comprehension test on steroids, and what that really is a test of general academic knowledge and vocabulary. Kids from more highly educated families are able to pick up much more of that kind of knowledge and vocabulary at home. So what would be fairer is to have a test that is actually based in content that students have been taught. That would help level the playing field. So something more like the AP or the SAT subject tests, which they eliminated a year ago.
You make a great point about the socioeconomic factors. We had that graph up. These tests cost money to take. But at the same time, what about the kids who go to schools that don't have great AP classes, that don't have things that teach you the SAT subject test? It was always that the SAT was the way that kids in rural communities and places like where I grew up, that was their ticket out if they did well.
Well, there are kids who would benefit from the SAT because it's hard to compare GPAs from different high schools. And so colleges can overlook, they might discount the GPA from a high school that they don't know much about, or they think, well, standards are low there. But when you have a standard measure like the SAT, there are going to be some kids who will be able to show their real potential.
You study the education system.
That's a relative handful.
Yeah, you study the education system. Is this an honest attempt to level the playing field, or is this more virtue signaling, window dressing by colleges that want to appear woke and with it?
Well, I can't really answer that. I'm not a mind reader, but I do think there's genuine concern.
Okay.
I think there's genuine concern on the part of colleges that they want diversity. I think what would make more sense is looking more for socioeconomic as opposed to racial diversity, because this is really, it's really a question of parental level of education. The kids who have parents with low levels of education are at a disadvantage, and that's correlated with socioeconomic status to a large degree in this country.
You said something really remarkable here about the need for socioeconomic diversity and diversity of thought that brings, which is not always a popular opinion, and it's one we're glad you came to share. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. I mean, I think that's important.
Yeah, it's very important.
You know, I mean, I think also
it's very. I hate to do this to you. We're going to have you back for this discussion because it's going to continue. But I got to run.
Sure.
Thank you very much. All right.
Sure. Thanks.
So many people want this truck that Ford has stopped taking orders. Why do Americans love pickups so much? Why? And do they want them to be electric? That's next. And America's best-selling pickup is now going electric. We're talking about the Ford F-150, now called the F-150 Lightning. It's 100% electric with all the power its gas-powered counterpart has. It can power your tools or even your house. Pickup sales have been on the rise since 2010. Nearly 14 million sold last year. But rough and rugged pickups electric, is that going to work? Joining us now, Tony Katz, author, radio show host. All right, Tony. We know you don't drive a pickup, but if you did, it would be a really nice one. I feel like this shouldn't be a huge surprise, should it?
No, not at all. With the Maverick, there are a couple things in its favor. First things first, they had stopped taking orders on the electric version back in late December. What they've stopped taking orders on now is what they call an enhanced engine, which is their hybrid, the 2-liter, which brings you a little over 200 horsepower. The all-electric is 191 horsepower. But in the end, people love the idea of a pickup truck. They love that idea.
Why do they
of
like it
strong.
so much?
Why do they like it? Because it's fun, because it's enjoyable, because when you're a guy, you cannot pick up chicks in a smart car. It can't be done. It's an impossibility. You want to feel good about what it is you're driving. And when we take a look at the price of an average used car right now, which is $29,000, this starts at 20 grand. All tricked out, this thing is about $37,800. There is not a reason to not think this wouldn't be crazy popular. And for psyche, you just feel good driving one.
The electric thing is an issue, and you and I have talked about electric cars in the past. I know you make fun of my love of Teslas. That's fine. But does the electric pickup truck defeat the pickup truck image?
No, and that's the weirdest part. I don't make fun of your love of Teslas. My only conversation about electric cars is, first, how about all the electricity that's going to take to charge these things? Let's not think that we're somehow saving the planet utilizing them. And I think General Motors is making a mistake in saying they're going to be all electric, but it doesn't take away from the mystique. The fit and finish on trucks these days, this is getting a luxury vehicle in a lot of ways. It's style, sophistication. If you have a truck that can work in the field and can also take you to a fine dinner out, that's what you want. And most people, they're not working in the field. They're taking home is whatever they bought from Home
Tony,
Depot.
you and I don't, neither of us work in the field with our trucks, although we probably would like to think that we would and would be good at it. I'm not sure either of us would, but no.
No, not. I know that I'm not the guy to build your house. And thank goodness there are people out there who can build your house, and they're driving trucks for sure.
They are indeed. Lastly, the F-150, are we going to see in Yellowstone, yours and my favorite show, a electric pickup? It doesn't feel like in Montana it works.
You know what? If you do, you'll have full acceptance, right? And I think it goes without question. Yes, you can see it. People have bought into electric. They'll buy into it as long as it will get them from point A to point B. It's still more inexpensive, and they can enjoy it. The key about the Maverick is that they can enjoy it. You can't enjoy a smart car no matter what you do.
You made a great point about the price points, too. Tony, good to see you, my friend. Thank you.
Take care, man.
All right. Thanks for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.